Welcome back. Today's story filled with drama and unexpected turns. Hit like, subscribe, and let's jump in.
I never saw it coming, but then again, who does? Divorce hits you like a lightning strike from a clear sky, unexpected, shocking. It doesn't kill you, not physically, but it shatters everything that matters: your heart, your trust, your love. I'm Oliver Benson, 38 years old, and honestly pretty average, 5 feet 11 inches in height, weighing about 195 pounds, and yes, starting to get that little tire around my middle. I'm an electrical engineer by profession, but this story isn't about my job. It's about my marriage, or what used to be my marriage, and how it all began. I met her in college, my future wife, or rather, my ex-wife. It was one of those cliché meet-cute moments you see in movies, except there wasn't anything cute about it. It was a Wednesday, and I was rushing to my next class, trying to beat the clock. Just as I passed a classroom door, it burst open, and a brunette flew out, slamming right into me. Books went flying everywhere. "Watch where you're going, idiot," she yelled, as if I'd somehow appeared out of nowhere just to ruin her day. "Now I'm going to be late because of you, you big oaf." I was too shocked to even respond for a second. "Excuse me, miss," I finally managed, but I was watching where I was going. "You're the one who rushed out without looking." I took a breath. "But no problem, I'll grab your books for you." As fate would have it, we both bent down at the same time to pick up the mess, and bam. We knocked heads hard. "God damn it," she snapped, rubbing her forehead. "Now look what you've done. You must be the biggest, dumbest, clumsiest idiot on this whole campus." And just like that, she snatched up her books and stormed off, leaving me standing there, dazed and confused. I couldn't believe that was how I met my future wife. As I gathered the rest of the scattered books, I realized one of them wasn't mine. My Calculus 2 book had somehow been swapped for a marketing principles textbook. I opened the cover, and there it was, a name and a phone number. I could only hope it was hers so I could get my textbook back. Little did I know that rude, fiery brunette was going to change my life in ways I never saw coming. I went on to my drafting class and thought nothing more about it. I would contact this brunette, Rebecca, after classes today. I'd at least try to see if the name written in the book was really the person who ran into me earlier. I had 2 more classes after my drafting class, and of course, calculus was one of them. Upon entering Professor Walker's classroom, I asked him if he had an extra textbook that I could use since mine was accidentally taken by another student. I explained about our little run-in, and he handed me a book from his bookcase, asking that it be returned to him after class. I thanked him and sat down, ready for class. After class, I returned Dr. Allen's book and left for the student center. Once there, I used the payphone to call the number listed in the book. "Hello, you've reached Rebecca and Katie. We're not available right now, but if you leave a name and phone number, we'll get back to you as soon as we can. Please wait for the beep, beep. Hi, I'm Oliver Benson, and I hope that one of you has my Calculus 2 book. I have a marketing principles textbook that belongs to Claire Harper. You can reach me at the following number after 7 this evening." "Thank you," I said, and gave my dorm's phone number. I did my duty and could wait a bit since I didn't have calculus again until Friday. I did have some homework but could use my roommate's book to get it done. Thank goodness we were both engineering students. I left the student center, drove my car to the dorm, and headed up to study for tomorrow's classes. There was a knock on my door shortly after 7:30. Jake, my roommate, said that I had a phone call in the hall. "Daniel, I hope you understand." The person on the phone started cussing me out until I said I wasn't you. "What's gotten into her?" "I have no idea, Jake, but she's a brunette named Claire Harper. I guess the temper comes with the name and the hair. You might want to hold the phone away from your ear because she sure cleaned the wax out of mine tonight." "Thanks, Jake, I'm forewarned." Picking up the receiver, I said, "This is Daniel. You must be Rebecca." Jake was right. What I got was uncontrolled screaming. "How dare you take my book? I needed it for that next class, and I had to wait until now to call you to get my book back. Where are you so that you can bring me my book?" "Excuse me, Miss Neal, but you also have a book of mine that I would like returned. I can meet you either in the library or the student center in half an hour so that we can exchange books, if that's convenient. Please let me know if you have another place in mind." Get your stupid butt over to the library in 15 minutes, or I'll have your butt handed to you on a platter. Now get going, you jerk, she snapped and hung up. Wow, what a temper. I did notice that she was about 5 feet 5 inches, around 125 pounds, with fiery brown hair. It seemed her temper was just as fiery as her hair, and what a mouth on her. That's one I'd have to stay far away from, I thought. I went back to my room, grabbed her book, and rushed over to the library. Thank goodness my dorm was only a few buildings away from the library. I checked inside, but she wasn't there yet, so I waited outside. I was there for about 20 minutes, and no Fireball had shown up yet, so I went inside again to look around the checkout desk but didn't see Rebecca. I asked the librarian if she had seen a short, fiery brunette, and she said no. So, I went back outside again to see if she was there. Long story short, I waited almost an hour before I finally saw her headed my way. I could almost see the heat waves coming off her as she walked up the steps to where I was seated on the wall by the entrance. Well, it's about damn time you got here, Rebecca. I've been waiting for over an hour. Here's your book. Now where the hell is mine? I asked, trying to diffuse the fire in her eyes. You're wrong on both counts, Gray. I'm not Rebecca, I'm Jessica Lane, and I saw you walk into the library not 5 minutes ago. Yeah, I walked into the library 5 minutes ago looking to see if you came in a different door. I got here at 6:40, and I've been either sitting out here or going inside to look for you since then. It's now 7:55, and you told me to be here 15 minutes after you called me. I left my dorm at 7:25 and was here within that time, but you weren't. So where is my calculus book? What followed was something I never expected from her. I never would have expected the response I got from Jessica. I'm so sorry, Mr. Gray. Here's your book, and may I please have my roommate's book? I feel awful about my outburst earlier. I grabbed Rebecca's book by mistake today. Please accept my apology for how I treated you. I assumed you were just some jerk trying to take advantage of me. I never expected someone like you. You were so sweet over the phone, and then I was so late getting here. I was shocked by your reaction and by what you said, but I guess I deserved it after the way I spoke to you both today and on the phone. That's not really who I am. It's kind of a defense mechanism when I get embarrassed or upset. Please forgive me. Her words caught me off guard, and I could see the genuine regret in her eyes. I wasn't expecting an apology, let alone such a sincere one. Of course, Mississippi Lane. Shall we try this again? Hello, I'm Oliver Benson, and I am pleased to make your acquaintance, Mississippi Lane. Would you care to go over to the student center and have a coffee or a soda? My treat. Why, thank you, Mr. Gray. I think I'd like that very much. And that's how it all started. We had a soda, well, I had a Coke, and she had a Sprite, but all sodas are called pop around here. It's not uncommon to hear, what kind of pop do you want? We got to talking, and then we noticed the time, it was midnight, and we both had early classes the next morning. I called Rebecca on Friday to see if I could take her out for dinner and a movie on Saturday. She accepted, and by the following March, I asked her to marry me. We visited both her parents and mine during spring break of that year, and I formally asked her father for her hand in marriage. We stayed engaged until she graduated a year later. I graduated a year ahead of Jessica and got a great job at an electronics company in Brookhaven. Jessica found a job at Innovate Corp, and we got married a year after she graduated. Things went fairly smoothly for the next 4 years. We had a few hiccups and a couple of arguments where Jessica became as fiery as when we first met, but overall, things went well. I asked about having children about a year after we got married, and Jessica asked to wait another year so she could get established. Lucas came along the next year, and Grace entered our lives a year later. Jessica then called a halt to the baby factory. We didn't want to mess with birth control methods, so I got a vasectomy. I was all for it, it could be reversed, and it was fairly painless compared to having a baby. When Grace and Jessica were still in the hospital, I went to my doctor and had the procedure done. I was ready to continue our sex life by the time the doctor cleared Jessica to resume bedroom activities. We continued to have a very active sex life, 3 to 4 times a week, which was fine by me. Fast forward 7 years, Grace is in 5th grade, Lucas is in 6th, and things were looking up. Jessica was due for a promotion to marketing manager, and I had been made manager of engineering services. Jessica did travel some with her job, but it was only for 3 to 4 days every other month, something we could handle, so it wasn't a problem. I did travel with my job too, mainly to seminars on new equipment. These trips usually lasted a week, and I wouldn't have to go again for 6 months to a year. I had just been assigned to head up a new project. I was working a little overtime, but there was no boost in pay since I was now salaried. I just worked longer hours during some weeks. Instead of the normal 40 hours, I was putting in about 7 to 10 extra hours each week, trying to schedule them for maybe an hour or so each day or on Saturdays. I was only working overtime once every other week. Our sex life had taken a slight tumble, but we were still getting it on 1 or 2 nights a week after the kids went to bed. Our house had the master suite on one side, with the other 2 bedrooms and a small den on the other side, separated by the living and dining rooms. The den was initially the kids' playroom but later turned into a study area as they grew older. I had taken up doing some amateur writing for the internet and did a little editing for my favorite authors, but that wasn't much more than 1 or 2 hours a night, usually after Jessica had gone to bed at 10. I could have done it earlier while Jessica was sitting in her chair reading or watching TV after supper. Recently, I had noticed that Jessica was having trouble with mood swings and thought she might be sick or stressed. It wasn't happening often, so I forgot about it until I noticed her squinting last month and asked if she needed new reading glasses. Her temper came out briefly, then disappeared again. I asked her if she needed a full physical, as it had been a few years since her last one. She said she would make an appointment, and I dropped the matter. That night, which was a Friday, it was my turn to fix dinner, so I didn't work overtime. I had put a roast in the crockpot before I left that morning. When I got home, I added potatoes, carrots, peas, celery, and onions. Jessica came in about an hour later and said, "Boy, something smells good tonight." "Yes, honey, I have a roast in the crockpot, and it should be done once you change and relax a little. Do you want some wine with dinner?" "Oh, that sounds lovely, Daniel. I'd love some. I'm going to take a shower and be right out." I had already fed the kids, and they were in their rooms doing homework. The kids always stopped at my parents' house after school since it was just a 5-minute walk from the school grounds. My folks lived about 3 miles away in the subdivision just before ours, so whoever got off work first would pick the kids up and bring them home. I had finished my new project a week ahead of schedule and was planning to do something special for Jessica since I had put in quite a bit of overtime on this project. I was going to surprise her tonight by asking if she'd like to spend a long weekend at a bed and breakfast out in Hillview, about an hour away, in the next couple of weeks. I hadn't made the reservations yet because I wanted to ensure she could go. My director had already approved the time off, and I would be getting a nice bonus for finishing the project ahead of schedule. I got a bottle of red wine from the pantry, opened it to breathe, and went about getting things ready for dinner. I heard the shower running and thought it a little strange that Jessica took a shower right after getting home, but it had been a hot day, so maybe she'd been out and about before coming home. I didn't think much more of it as I puttered around the kitchen, getting everything ready and laid out on the table. I had picked up some flowers from a stand at the entrance to our subdivision on the way home and placed them in a vase on the table. I set our plates next to each other, then dished up the roast and vegetables as soon as I heard the shower shut off. Jessica emerged from the bedroom in her robe, her hair still damp, but she looked beautiful to me. I held her chair for her, poured her wine, then bent down and kissed her neck. I whispered that I loved her and told her I had a surprise for her after dinner. "I have a kind of surprise for you afterward too," she said. We made small talk as I dished up her plate, and we ate our meal. The kids came out after finishing their homework and went to play their games. I explained that Jessica and I needed some adult time together. Even at 12 and 13, they understood that we didn't get a lot of alone time with my overtime and Jessica's traveling for work. I mentioned to Jessica during dinner that my overtime would be gone for a while since we had completed my project early. She said that was nice, but I had a feeling something was off. There was a sense of impending doom, and I wondered if she had to take a long work trip. After dinner, I cleared the dishes and sat back down next to my wife. She poured us each another glass of wine and then looked me in the eye. "We need to talk, Daniel." My heart sank. Oh God, what happened? Jessica hesitated, then took a deep breath. "Daniel, I'm not sure how to say this, but I want a divorce. And I'm taking the children with me." I stared into her brown eyes, now filled with a fire I hadn't seen in years. It felt like I was free-falling. Why? What did I do to deserve this sneak attack from you? I thought we had a great marriage. I'm home every night except when I'm at training or a seminar. I make love to you every chance I get, usually 2 or 3 times a week, and I give you everything you want, that new car you drive, this house. Jessica, what did I do wrong? It's not any one thing, she said, her voice trembling. It's kind of an accumulation of things. You go into that damn study on your computer and waste hours editing other people's stuff online. You never have time for me at night. You don't touch me like you used to. You don't hold me, and you never want to go out and party like we used to. It's all that and more. How can you say those things? I replied, incredulous. I sit right there in the living room and watch the shows you have on TV while you sit there with your nose in a book. Then you have the nerve to say I never pay attention to you. 9 times out of 10, I only get on the computer after you go to bed, except when I need to do something for work, and that's always after you go to bed too. I never made you wait for anything in the bedroom. You would either say something or I would initiate it, and we'd go to bed after making sure the kids were asleep. How can you say I don't appreciate you or don't pay attention to you? Jessica's face hardened. It was only 2 months ago when we went out dancing at the Eclipse Lounge, Daniel. How can you say those things about me? Just then, her fiery temper truly ignited, and she started screaming at me. As she raged, I noticed Lucas and Grace standing in the hallway, eyes wide and bodies trembling. Lucas had his arms wrapped tightly around his sister, trying to comfort her. I grabbed Jessica by the shoulders and tried to turn her around so she could see the children, but she slapped me across the face and stormed into our bedroom. See what you've done now, you jerk, she yelled. Get out of my house. Leave now. I couldn't believe what had just happened. I turned toward the kitchen, grabbed my car keys, and walked toward the garage door. I took one last look back at my children, who were huddled together, shaking in fear, before I left. I got about a block from the house when I pulled over and broke down completely. I was shaking so hard that I couldn't drive. I sat there, slumped over the steering wheel, with tears streaming down my face. My whole life had just crumbled. My wife wanted a divorce, she wanted to take my children away from me, and she kicked me out of my own house. I reached for my phone to call my dad, but my hands were trembling so much that I couldn't hold onto it, and it clattered to the floor. I stayed there, slumped over the steering wheel, feeling like my life was draining away with each sob, each breath, each beat of my heart. I had no idea how long I sat there with the car running, feeling utterly lost. Eventually, I heard a tapping noise from far away. I kept trying to push the noise further away, but it grew louder and louder until I heard a voice say, "Hey, you. Open the door or roll down the window, mister." The words didn't register at first, nothing seemed to have meaning anymore. Suddenly, there was a crash as the passenger window shattered. I looked up, dazed, and saw flashing red and blue lights reflecting off the surrounding trees. Then a hand reached through the shattered window, grabbing me and shaking me. I turned my head, still disoriented, and saw a uniformed arm reaching through the passenger side. As the door on my side opened, I was blinded by a bright light shining directly in my eyes. For a moment, I thought it was the infamous light at the end of the tunnel that people talk about when near death. Then everything went black. The next thing I knew, I was in a hospital bed with tubes and wires attached to me, my limbs restrained so I couldn't move. I tried to call out, but only a croak escaped my lips. The last thing I remembered was that bright light. Was I dead? Was this heaven? Probably not. So, this must be hell. Then I thought of Jessica, the woman who had ripped my still beating heart from my chest, ground it up, and fed it back to me. Was this some cruel joke of hers? God, she was heartless. I tried to move to get more comfortable but must have pulled on something because a searing pain shot through me, and I screamed. The noise seemed to echo in the room, and soon after, 2 nurses rushed in. What happened? One of them asked. I don't know. All I know is that my side hurts, something fierce. Can you see what happened? I rasped. And please, tell me, is this heaven or hell? One of the nurses, a woman in her mid-50s, lifted the sheet. The tape on your catheter came loose, sir. It was stuck to the sheet and pulled when you moved, she said. The younger nurse, probably in her late 20s, added, "You're not in heaven or hell, Mr. Gray. You're in Crestview Medical Center. You've been here for 5 days now. The Brookhaven police found you slumped over the wheel of your car. When they tried to wake you, you had a seizure and were rushed here. You've been in a coma ever since. Have my wife and children or my parents been notified?" I asked. "As far as I know, your wife was notified, but she hasn't come by. Your mother was here yesterday, and your father is due to visit any time now. Is there anyone else we should contact?" "No. No one else. I guess I can wait for my dad to call my office and let them know." "Oh, and could I get unstrapped from this bed?" "I'll call the doctor to see if that's okay, but I'm sure he'll authorize it," said the older nurse. "By the way, you can call me Agnes, and this is Nurse Lisa." "Thank you both, especially you, Nurse Diane," I said. "I feel much better now." "Just trying to help, young man," Nurse Diane replied. "You said your wife hasn't visited yet. That's rather strange. I heard the officer who brought you in specifically used your phone to notify your emergency contacts." "I wouldn't know why," I sighed. "Last thing I remember, I was at home, and after dinner, my wife told me she wanted a divorce. She wanted to take my kids away from me, and she kicked me out. I drove off, and that's the last thing I remember." Nurse Diane gave me a sympathetic look. "You didn't cheat on her, did you, Mr. Gray?" she asked softly. "No, ma'am. I would never do that. I love my family too much to even think about doing something like that to them." "Well, I won't pry. You try to rest now, and I'll get with the doctor as soon as I can." She patted my shoulder gently before leaving the room, followed by Nurse Lisa. A few minutes later, my dad walked in. "Are you all right, son? You had us worried sick. Do you know why Jessica took off with the kids?" I shook my head, still processing everything. "She did that. She dropped this on me after dinner on Friday, and I had to leave. I couldn't handle it, Dad. I was on my way to your house when I had to pull over because I couldn't see through the tears. My hands were shaking so bad that I could barely hold onto the wheel. I woke up here and have no idea what happened after that." Dad sighed and sat down in the chair next to my bed. "We haven't heard from Jessica since last week. I tried calling her at work, at home, and on her cell, but I got nothing. The kids haven't been to school since Friday, and we have no idea where they are. We're getting worried, Daniel. We need to call the police and maybe even the FBI. She's taken the kids. I want them found," I said, my voice trembling with a mix of fear and anger. Dad pulled out his cell phone and dialed a number from memory. "Hal, this is Tom Gray. Daniel's wife took off with the kids and hasn't been heard from since Friday. Yes, he wants the FBI involved. It's been over 5 days, so the waiting period for a missing person report is up. Okay, I'll let him know." He hung up and turned back to me. That was Harold Price, the Brookhaven police chief. He's going to call Mark, the local FBI contact, to get them involved. We'll get to the bottom of this, son. As Dad made more calls, I began to think. My God, what's happening to me? Why am I suddenly thinking these awful thoughts about Jessica? She and our children have been my whole life since we got married. How can I go from being a loving husband to this? My thoughts were dark, filled with anger and resentment, feelings I never would have expected to have toward her. Nurse Diane came back in a little later to unstrap me from the bed and remove the catheter, though she left the wires for monitoring my vital signs. After taking everything out, she injected something into my fore. "Mr. Gray, the doctor wants you to get some rest. We noticed that you were starting to get agitated, and he wants to keep you calm. It shouldn't make you sleepy, just relaxed. You had a seizure, and he wants to ensure you don't have another one. You didn't have a stroke, but we're still monitoring you very closely." I nodded, trying to absorb her words. "Thank you, Nurse Diane. I'll try to stay calm, but I can't help but worry about my children." "I understand, Mr. Gray," she said kindly. "Your father has been talking to the police and, I believe, an FBI agent. It sounds like they're doing everything they can to find your children and your wife. You won't help anyone by getting more worked up, so please, just focus on healing for now." As she left, I turned to Dad, who was still on his phone. Dad, I've been thinking about where Jessica might go or where she might think no one would look for her. She has a cousin over in Shreveport and an old college roommate named Claire Harper who lives near Springfield, Missouri. Those are two places that most people probably wouldn't consider. Her cousin is only about 7 years older than she is, and Jessica keeps in touch with him around the holidays. That's good information, son. I'll pass it along to Harold and see if he can get some people looking into it. Dad dialed another number as I closed my eyes, exhausted from the conversation. I drifted off to sleep, still worried about Lucas and Grace and wondering what Jessica had done to them that night. I awoke the next morning to find a different set of nurses attending to me. Mom was also there, sitting in a chair near the foot of my bed. "Mom, is there any word yet?" I croaked out, my throat dry. "Not yet, Daniel." "Oh, I'm so sorry this is happening to you." I knew something was wrong when Jessica picked up the kids on Friday night, but I just couldn't figure out what. She seemed okay, but there was something in her eyes. I should have warned you. "Mom, we can worry about what we should have done later. Right now, we need to focus on finding the kids and, hopefully, Jessica. Once they're found, I think we need to make sure she gets some help, because this isn't normal. If she's sick, I want her to get better, but I also want to protect my children." "I agree, honey," Mom said, her voice soft. "Your father and I will do everything we can to help. We love you, and we love Lucas and Grace. We even came to love Jessica, but I never liked her temper." "Wait, are you saying you've seen her temper flare up before?" "The last time I remember was about 4 years ago, shortly after Grace started school." "Yes, Daniel," Mom said hesitantly. "There have been a couple of times when she picked up the kids from our house, and she was upset. Once, she nearly slapped Lucas for tearing his jacket at school. I stopped her, and she immediately broke down in tears, saying she didn't know what had come over her. I know I should have told you, but she begged me not to." "Mom, has this been happening more frequently since she started traveling for work?" I asked, feeling a knot forming in my stomach. "Now that you mention it," Mom said, frowning, "she has seemed more irritable lately, but I just thought it was stress from work. I'll tell your father to share this with the police and the FBI. It might help them understand what's going on." Nurse Diane returned to the room and asked if I needed anything. "Yes, I'm feeling tired again. I could use some rest," I said. "I'm just worn out from all of this." "No problem, Mr. Gray," she said with a reassuring smile. "I'll let the doctor know, and we'll get you something to help you sleep." She came back a few moments later with a syringe, injected it into my fore, and I soon drifted into a deep sleep. It was the middle of the night when I woke up again, groggy but feeling a little stronger. The clock on the wall read 3:30 a.m. I could see my dad dozing in the chair by my bed. As I lay there, the door opened, and Nurse Lisa quietly came in to check on me. "Mr. Gray, how are you feeling?" she whispered. "I'm doing okay," I replied. "Any news?" "I'm not sure, but your father has been in contact with the authorities," she said, giving me a sympathetic smile. "Try to rest a little more." A few hours later, Dad woke up and smiled at me. "Son, we've got some good news. Jessica was spotted in Shreveport, and it looks like she's on her way to Springfield. Her cousin confirmed she stopped by with the kids, but they left for Missouri yesterday." "Thank God," I breathed, feeling a wave of relief. "Are the kids okay?" "Yes, they're fine. Her cousin said they were excited about the road trip, though Lucas seemed worried about you. Jessica apparently told them you had a health scare and that they were traveling to get used to doing things without you. Your mother flew out to Springfield as soon as we had confirmation of where Jessica was heading, so she should be there any moment. That's the best news I've heard in days, Dad. I just hope everything goes smoothly." Dad nodded, relief evident on his face. "We're all praying for that, Daniel. Your mom is on the ground in Springfield now, and the FBI has coordinated with the local authorities to intercept Jessica and bring her and the children back home. They assured us that they'll handle everything delicately, especially with the kids involved." "Thank you, Dad," I said, my voice catching as a wave of emotion hit me. "I just want my family back and for this nightmare to be over." A few hours passed in agonizing anticipation before Dad's phone rang. He answered quickly, and after a brief conversation, he handed the phone to me. "It's Lucas." He wants to talk to you. My heart leapt as I took the phone. Hey, buddy. Is that really you? Yeah, Dad, it's me, Lucas said, his voice trembling. Are you okay? Mom said you were really sick. We were so worried. I'm okay now, son. I'm still in the hospital, but I'm going to be fine. I promise, I said, feeling tears well up in my eyes. How's Grace? Is she doing all right? She's okay. She was scared, but Grandma is here with us now. She made us feel a lot better, he said, his voice softening with relief. Mom's been acting really weird though, Dad. She keeps saying that we need to get used to life without you. What's going on? I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. Mom's not feeling well right now, Lucas. She's going to see some doctors who will help her get better. Everything is going to be okay, buddy. I'm so glad you and your sister are safe. You'll be coming home soon. Can we see you when we get back? He asked, his voice small. Of course, you can. I wouldn't have it any other way, I replied, trying to hold back my emotions. I love you, Lucas. Can you put Grace on the phone for me? Okay, Dad. Here's Grace. A moment later, I heard Grace's tiny voice. Daddy, are you really okay? Yes, sweetheart, I'm okay, I assured her. I've missed you so much. Don't you worry, everything will be fine. You'll be home soon, and we'll be together again. Promise, she asked tearfully. I promise, Princess. I love you very much. Now, be good for Grandma, okay? I will, Daddy. I love you too. I handed the phone back to Dad, who spoke with my mother for a few more minutes before hanging up. The kids are fine, son, he said. Jessica agreed to go with the authorities without any issues. They'll be bringing her and the kids back as soon as possible. Your mom is making sure they're well taken care of. A sense of relief washed over me. At least the children were safe. Jessica, on the other hand, was still a mystery. What was going on in her mind? I couldn't help but worry about her mental state and how things had spiraled out of control. Later that day, a doctor came in to discuss my condition. Mr. Gray, it seems your health is improving, and we can start removing some of the monitoring equipment. If all goes well, we should be able to discharge you in a few days. Given your recent seizure, it's important to rest and avoid any stressful situations for the time being. I'll do my best, I replied. But what about my family? Can I see my kids when they get back? Yes, we can arrange that, the doctor said. But remember, it's important to take things slowly. You've been through a lot. As the hours passed, I tried to focus on the fact that Lucas and Grace would soon be home. I still had so many questions. Why had Jessica suddenly wanted a divorce? What was behind the drastic change in her behavior? Was this really just stress, or was there something more serious going on? The next morning, my dad walked into my hospital room with a look of quiet determination. Son, we've learned more about Jessica's situation. It turns out she had been seeing a neurologist for some time, but hadn't told anyone. They found a small brain tumor during a routine checkup a couple of months ago. It's benign, but its location could be causing mood swings and other behavioral issues. I was stunned. A brain tumor. Why didn't she tell me? Did she think I wouldn't care? I don't know, Daniel. Maybe she was scared, or didn't want to worry you, Dad said. The doctors think the stress from work and the tumor's pressure on certain parts of her brain may have contributed to her erratic behavior. They're going to evaluate her while she's under observation. So, there's a medical explanation for all this? I asked, feeling a mix of relief and guilt for the thoughts I'd had. It seems that way, Dad replied. They're considering surgery to remove the tumor, but they need your consent as her next of kin since she's under psychiatric observation right now. I took a moment to process this new information. If surgery can help her get better, then, of course, I'll authorize it. I just want Jessica to be okay and for our family to heal. Dad nodded. We'll get through this, Daniel. You're doing the right thing. A couple of days later, Jessica underwent surgery to remove the tumor. The neurosurgeon, Dr. Patel, explained to me after the procedure, the surgery went well. The tumor had been causing pressure on areas of the brain responsible for regulating emotions. We're optimistic that her mood swings and behavior will improve now that the tumor has been removed. However, she'll need time to recover, and there may still be some effects we'll need to monitor. Thank you, doctor, I said. I appreciate everything you've done. Jessica was kept in the hospital for a week before being transferred to a rehabilitation facility for further observation and care. The children returned home with my parents, and I was discharged soon after. The day I was finally able to see Jessica was filled with mixed emotions. As I entered her room at the rehabilitation center, I saw her sitting up in bed, looking pale but otherwise well. Her hair was still growing back from where they'd shaved a section for the surgery, and there was a bandage covering part of her head. She gave me a small, tentative smile. "Daniel," she said softly. "I'm so sorry for everything. I know I hurt you and the kids. I was so scared. I thought I was losing my mind." I took a seat next to her bed and gently held her hand. "Jessica, I know about the tumor. I wish you'd told me sooner. We could have faced this together." "I was afraid, Daniel," she admitted, tears filling her eyes. I didn't know how to explain what I was feeling. I didn't even understand it myself. All I could do was lash out when things got too overwhelming. "I understand now," I said, squeezing her hand. "The important thing is that you're getting the help you need. We're going to figure this out together. The kids are back home, and they're okay. They miss you, and so do I." Jessica broke down in tears, and I held her as she cried. "I love you, Daniel. I never stopped loving you. I just lost myself for a while." "I love you too, Jessica," I whispered. "We'll take it one day at a time. We have a lot to rebuild, but we'll do it together." Jessica's recovery was a slow and steady process. After spending 2 weeks in the rehabilitation facility, she was allowed to come home, under the condition that she would continue to receive outpatient therapy and follow-up appointments with the neurologist. She stayed with my parents during the day while I was at work and the kids were at school. In the evenings, I would bring her back home, and we would try to find a new normal. We catered to her every need, sometimes pampering her to the point where she jokingly complained that she was getting too spoiled. "You all better be careful, or I'll refuse to go back to work and just stay home all day," she teased one night, as I brought her a cup of tea. I smiled, relieved to see some of her old humor returning. "Well, if that's what you want, we can manage. With my promotion and the raise that came with it, we'll be just fine on my salary alone." "Nice try," she said, giving me a playful glare. "You're not getting off that easy, mister. I plan on going back to Innovate Corp and taking over Drake's job. I'm not going to let those jerks push me out of my career." I nodded, recognizing the determination in her voice. "Yes, ma'am. I wouldn't dare get in your way." Jessica's words were more than just a joke. Her old drive was returning, and with it, a fire that I hadn't seen in a long time. After several more weeks of rest and rehabilitation, she felt ready to confront the problems at her workplace. With my support, and after consulting with a lawyer who specialized in employment law, Jessica decided to pursue legal action against the individuals who had harassed her. Together, we arranged a meeting at Innovate Corp. We brought along our lawyer, Susan Kent, her partner, Tom Barker, and a process server who carried legal notices. I had requested a meeting with Mr. Nathan Brooks, the head of Human Resources, and had insisted that his assistant, Blake Foster, along with Logan Carter and Henry Mason, be present. I also asked if Mr. Alexander Dalton, the company's owner, could attend, and his legal team was brought in. We met in a large conference room, with Jessica's team sitting on one side of the table and the company's representatives on the other. Susan started by asking for everyone's identification to verify who was present. After this formality, the process server handed legal notices to Langston, Drake, and Archer, stating, "Gentlemen, you have all been served." Mr. Montgomery, an older man with a stern expression, raised an eyebrow. "What's this about?" he asked, turning to his legal team, who quickly skimmed through the documents. Susan leaned forward. "Mr. Montgomery, this is about sexual harassment and hostile work environment complaints filed by my client, Amelia Benson, against these individuals. Their actions created an unprofessional and abusive atmosphere that affected not only her well-being but also that of other employees." Jessica spoke up, her voice steady. Felix, Quentin, and why it made my life at work unbearable. The inappropriate comments, the constant pressure, and the threats. It all culminated in my decision to take legal action. As she continued, I noticed a change in Mr. Montgomery's demeanor. He was no longer just listening, he was evaluating the situation. He turned to Mr. Cross, who was seated at the far end of the table. "Mr. Cross, do you have any explanation for what I'm hearing?" Before Cross could respond, Drake spoke up, his face red with anger. "This is ridiculous. It's just her word against ours. She's trying to ruin our careers." The outburst caused Susan to interject. "There are witnesses who can corroborate Jessica's claims." One of her co-workers, Ivy Turner, has also expressed concerns about the behavior in the marketing department. Mr. Montgomery's expression hardened as he shifted his gaze to Drake, Langston, and Archer. "Effective immediately, you three are suspended pending an internal investigation," he said, his voice calm but firm. "If the allegations are substantiated, you will be terminated." The three men protested loudly, their voices a chaotic mix of indignation and denial. Mr. Montgomery raised his hand, silencing them. "Enough. I will not tolerate this kind of behavior in my company. Now, Mrs. Gray, what can we do to make this right?" Jessica looked at me, and I gave a small nod of encouragement. She turned back to Mr. Montgomery. "I want my old job back," she said. "Or better yet, I'd like to take over Mr. Drake's position. I've been doing most of his work for the past year anyway." Mr. Montgomery glanced at Mr. Cross. "Harling, look into that immediately. I want to know if Mrs. Gray's request is justified. If it is, then congratulations, Mrs. Gray, you're our new marketing manager." Jessica smiled, relief washing over her. "Thank you, Mr. Montgomery. I promise you won't regret it." The meeting ended amicably, and as we walked out of the conference room, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. It wasn't the end of our struggles, but it was a significant victory, one that proved we could face the challenges together. The months that followed brought more healing. Jessica adjusted well to her new role, and her confidence grew as she reclaimed her place at work. The surgery had indeed improved her mood swings and erratic behavior, and while she still experienced some side effects, such as occasional headaches and fatigue, they were manageable. We both continued counseling to work on our relationship, which, despite everything, was growing stronger than ever. As a family, we made a conscious effort to spend more time together. The kids were resilient, but I knew that they had been through a lot. We took a trip to Adventureland over the summer, making memories that I hoped would overshadow the dark days from earlier in the year. It was a time to remind each other what mattered most. Our homecoming was a turning point. Jessica and I rebuilt the bond we once shared, and we learned to communicate in ways we hadn't before. I found myself more present, not just physically, but emotionally, and we began to focus on creating a future together instead of looking back at the past. A year has now passed since the ordeal. Life is good, even if it's not perfect. Jessica and I still have our ups and downs, but we're facing them as a team. The lawsuit was settled out of court, and Jessica received a significant compensation package. She put most of the money into a trust for the kids' college education and invested the rest. It wasn't about the money, it was about reclaiming her dignity and making sure our family had a fresh start. The scars from this experience may never completely fade, but in a way, they have made us stronger. We've learned that no matter what challenges life throws our way, we can overcome them, as long as we're willing to fight for each other. As the weeks turned into months, Jessica's recovery continued. She returned to work full-time, and with her promotion to marketing manager, she took charge with a renewed sense of purpose. The hostile work environment improved significantly after the departures of Drake, Archer, and Langston, and Jessica became a mentor to other women in the company, fostering a supportive atmosphere. At home, we embraced our roles as parents and partners. We made it a priority to eat dinner together as a family every night, and weekends were reserved for outings, board games, or just watching movies together. It was the kind of simple life I had always wanted. The ordeal had changed us, but I believed it had changed us for the better. Jessica continued with her follow-up care. The doctors monitored her closely, conducting MRIs every few months to ensure the tumor hadn't regrown. She also continued to attend therapy sessions to help process everything she had been through. The support from her neurologist, therapist, and our family made all the difference. One day, after her checkup, Jessica came home with a determined look on her face. "Daniel," she said, "I've decided I want to help others who've been in similar situations. I want to start a support group for people recovering from brain injuries or dealing with mental health struggles." I smiled at her, proud of the woman she had become. "I think that's a wonderful idea. You've come so far, and you could help a lot of people with your story." Jessica launched the support group with a few friends from work and a local neurologist who offered to assist. It started small, but soon grew to include people from all walks of life. Hearing the struggles and triumphs of others helped Jessica as much as it helped them. She became a voice of encouragement, sharing her experiences and reminding everyone that no matter how dark things seemed, there was always a way forward. The kids, too, adapted well. Lucas and Grace had their moments of struggle, but they were resilient, and their smiles came back as we settled into our new normal. We continued to focus on making memories as a family, going on trips and taking time to just be together. The summer after our Adventureland trip, we went on a cross-country road trip to see the Grand Canyon, Yellowstone, and the Pacific Coast. The adventure brought us closer together and gave the kids stories they would tell for years. As for my career, I was promoted to Director of Engineering Operations at my company. It was a role that came with its own set of challenges, but the new position allowed me more flexibility and less travel, which was exactly what I wanted for our family. I chose a trusted colleague to fill my previous position, ensuring that my transition wouldn't create any turmoil within the department. One day, nearly a year and a half after the surgery, Jessica came into the living room with an envelope in her hand. She sat down next to me, a hint of nervousness in her expression. "Daniel, there's something I want to talk to you about," she said. I looked at her, a bit concerned. "What is it, Jess?" She handed me the envelope. "It's from the doctor. It's my most recent MRI results. They're clear, Daniel. The tumor hasn't come back. I'm officially cancer-free." A wave of relief and happiness washed over me. I took her hands in mine. "That's the best news I could have hoped for," I said, pulling her into a tight embrace. We sat there for a moment, letting the joy of the news sink in. There was one more thing Jessica wanted to address. After everything that had happened, she suggested that we renew our wedding vows. "We've been through so much," she said. "I want to reaffirm the love and commitment we share, not just for us, but for Lucas and Grace. I want them to see how far we've come and how strong our family is." I agreed wholeheartedly. The vow renewal ceremony took place on a sunny autumn afternoon in a park near our home. It was a small gathering, just close family and friends. Jessica wore a simple white dress, and the children stood by our sides. As we exchanged vows, I realized that our love had deepened in ways I hadn't thought possible. We weren't the same people we had been when we first got married, but that was okay. We had grown together, overcoming hardships and finding new strength in our bond. The support group Jessica started continued to thrive, and she eventually expanded it into a local nonprofit organization, focusing on mental health advocacy and support for families dealing with neurological conditions. She poured her heart into it, and I was by her side, offering whatever help I could. Over the years, we kept traveling with the kids and taking on new adventures. We made it a point to visit a new place every year, creating a lifetime of memories that would carry us through any future storms. Our family wasn't perfect, but it was stronger, more united, and filled with a deeper appreciation for life's moments. Looking back now, I realize that the journey we went through was filled with pain, doubt, and fear. But it was also filled with hope, love, and renewal. Jessica's diagnosis and the events that followed changed our lives forever, but they also gave us a chance to grow as individuals and as a family. As I reflect on all that has happened, I know that we've been tested, but we emerged from the darkness with a renewed commitment to each other. We made it through, not because it was easy, but because we fought for our family, our love, and our future. Jessica and I learned to communicate, trust, and lean on one another like never before. In the end, life is about the moments we share with the people we love. And for us, it has become a journey of healing and resilience. There will always be challenges, but I know that we will face them together, hand in hand, as we always have and always will. This is where our story ends, but in truth, it's not the end at all. It's a new beginning. Thanks for watching. Daniel and Jessica's story shows the power of love and resilience in overcoming life's toughest challenges. See you next time.